Margaret Wilson had always believed that love was something you built brick by brick, through scraped knees, bedtime stories, and whispered prayers in the dark. For 34 years, she had been a mother first and everything else second. She lived in a small, fading house on the outskirts of a quiet American town in Springfield. The porch paint was peeling. The wind chimes barely sang anymore. And the garden she once tended with pride had surrendered to weeds. It hadn't always been that way. There was a time when her home echoed with laughter. Her son Daniel used to race toy trucks across the wooden floor. Her daughter Claire would run barefoot through the kitchen, braids flying behind her. Margaret remembered the smell of pancakes on Sunday mornings. The way her husband Thomas would kiss her forehead before church. The way life once felt whole. But Thomas had passed away 6 years earlier, a sudden heart attack that left her world split in two. After that, things slowly changed. Daniel moved to Chicago for a high-paying corporate job. Claire relocated to Los Angeles, chasing dreams of acting. At first, they called every day. Then once a week. Then holidays. Then, silence. Margaret told herself they were busy. That this was what independence looked like. That good mothers let go. But when the phone stopped ringing entirely, the silence felt like abandonment. The final blow came one rainy October evening. Daniel called. His voice was different. Sharper. Impatient. "Mom, we think it's time you sell the house." The house? The house Thomas built with his own hands. "We found a nice assisted living place. It's better for you. You'll have company." Company. The word felt like pity wrapped in politeness. "I don't want to leave," she whispered. There was a pause. Then the sentence that shattered her. "You can't live alone forever." 2 months later, the house was sold. Margaret was moved into a modest apartment on the edge of town, smaller, colder, quieter. Daniel didn't stay long after helping her unpack. Claire sent flowers. No one came back. That first night alone, Margaret sat on the edge of her narrow bed and stared at the blank wall. She wasn't angry. She was erased. The woman who had once stayed up all night sewing Halloween costumes. The woman who worked double shifts to pay for piano lessons. The woman who sold her wedding ring to help Daniel through college. Was now an afterthought. As winter settled over Missouri, so did loneliness. She stopped cooking full meals. Stopped decorating for holidays. Stopped opening the curtains. Neighbors didn't know her name. Her phone remained silent. Until one night, when something unexpected scratched at her door. Soft. Hesitant. Almost like it was asking permission. Margaret froze. Then it came again. A small, desperate sound. And for the first time in months, she felt needed. She opened the door. And that's when she saw him. A thin, trembling stray dog, ribs visible beneath muddy fur. One ear bent awkwardly. Eyes cautious but hopeful. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just looked at her, as if he understood what it meant to be left behind. Margaret's heart cracked open. "Well," she whispered, kneeling slowly, "I suppose we're both a little lost." The dog stepped forward. And just like that, her life began again. Margaret named him Rusty. Not because of his color, though his fur had hints of amber beneath the dirt, but because he looked worn by life. Like something forgotten in the rain. The first night, he slept near the door. He didn't trust comfort yet. Margaret didn't push him. She understood distance. She warmed leftover chicken. Placed a blanket beside the radiator. Sat quietly while he ate. The apartment no longer felt empty. It felt shared. Over the next few weeks, Rusty began to change. He followed her from room to room. Sat beside her knitting chair. Rested his head gently on her knee during the evenings. Margaret began speaking again, not to fill silence, but to share it. "I used to bake apple pie every Sunday," she told him once. His tail thumped lightly. "You would have liked Daniel," she added softly. "He loved dogs." Rusty looked up at the sound of the name. Margaret swallowed hard. For months, she had tried not to say her children's names aloud. But somehow, it felt safe now. They started walking together each morning. Slow steps. Cold air. Golden sunrises stretching across quiet streets. Neighbors began smiling. "Morning, Margaret." It was the first time someone outside her family had used her name in months. Rusty became her shadow. Her reason to wake up. Her reason to cook. Her reason to decorate again when spring arrived. She planted flowers in small pots outside her apartment door. Rusty sat beside her like a guardian. People stopped to pet him. They started conversations. Margaret was no longer invisible. But not everything was healed. Some nights, when the wind howled, Rusty would whimper in his sleep. Margaret would sit beside him, stroking his fur gently. "It's all right," she'd whisper. She didn't know if she was comforting him. Or herself. One afternoon at the park, a little girl approached. "Can I pet him?" Margaret nodded. Rusty remained still, patient, careful. "He's really gentle," the girl smiled. Margaret's eyes filled. "So was my son," she whispered. Rusty pressed closer to her leg. And in that simple gesture, she realized something powerful. Love hadn't left her life. It had just arrived differently. It came on a Tuesday. An unfamiliar number. Margaret almost ignored it. But Rusty nudged her hand as if insisting. "Hello?" Silence. Then, "Mom?" Her breath caught. "Daniel." His voice sounded tired. "Older. I lost my job." She said nothing. "I don't know who else to call." Margaret felt something twist inside her chest. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just ache. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. There was a long pause. "I thought I was too busy building a life to realize I left mine behind." Tears slid down her face. Rusty placed his paw gently on her foot. "I'm sorry, Mom." The words were small. But they were real. Margaret swallowed. "You can come home," she whispered. Another silence. "Home?" She looked around her modest apartment. At the worn sofa. At the small kitchen. At the dog who had saved her. Yes, she said firmly. Home. Daniel arrived 3 days later. He looked thinner. Exhausted. Humble. When Margaret opened the door, he hesitated. Then he saw Rusty. And smiled faintly. You got a dog. Margaret nodded. He found me. Daniel knelt slowly. Rusty approached carefully, sniffing, cautious. Then he licked Daniel's hand. Something inside Daniel broke. He began to cry. I didn't mean to leave you, he said, voice shaking. I thought success meant distance. Margaret stepped forward and pulled him into her arms. I never stopped loving you. They stood there, mother and son, wrapped in years of misunderstanding. Rusty pressed against both of them, holding them together. Daniel stayed longer than planned. Then Claire came. Then weekends turned into regular visits. The apartment filled with laughter again. But this time, Margaret was different. She was stronger. She had survived abandonment. She had rebuilt love from ashes. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Daniel sat beside her. I thought I had to leave to become someone, he said. Margaret smiled softly. You were already someone. Rusty rested his head in her lap. Older now. Slower. But still watching her like she was the center of the world. Because to him, she was. And as Margaret looked at her children, really looked at them, she understood something profound. Love is never lost. Sometimes it wanders. Sometimes it forgets the way. But when it returns broken open. And that's what makes it real. That night, Margaret whispered into Rusty's fur. You saved me. His tail thumped once. Outside, the wind chimes sang again. And for the first time in years, home didn't feel like a place. It felt like love.